This is Daggerheart, Critical Role's new game system, and today we're using it to make a brand new character. I received this copy for free, which is great since my budget is already fully allocated to houseplants and novelty earrings. I've actually played a good bit of Daggerheart already. I ran a few games for friends using the beta rules, and I even got to play with a few of the designers while they were developing it. Plus, I have a dagger, and I often fantasize about driving it into someone's heart. Hypothetically. But this is my first brush with the final version of the game, and I'm excited to see where they landed. As a certified character building addict, I've made more D&D characters than I've made grilled cheeses. And trust me, I've made a lot of grilled cheeses. I've done the whole pipeline, from ethereal elf with a haunted past to feral goblin who is stinky for religious reasons. But what I really want to do today is make something I couldn't make in D&D, something that is uniquely Daggerheart. So let's move approximately 3 feet to my left and crack this bad boy open. If you haven't heard about it, Daggerheart is a heroic, narrative-focused role-playing game created by the team behind Critical Role. It's been just over 2 years since they announced they were working on it, and it finally released last week. It's meant to have simple mechanics that are built for character-focused drama and streamlined cinematic combat. The rules are simple so that the feelings can be complicated. It's built to work for everything from one-shots to long-form campaigns, and players are meant to participate in the world-building alongside the GM. That's right. Players are finally going to start pulling their weight around here. Instead of using d20s like in D&D, players use 2 d12s in contrasting colors called duality dice, which represent hope and fear. When you want to do something, you roll both dice, add them together, and say which one of the dice is higher. So if you rolled a 7 on your hope die and an 8 on your fear die, you rolled a 15 with fear. When you roll with hope, you gain a hope, which is a resource that you can spend to do stuff. When you roll with fear, the GM gains a fear, which is a resource they can spend, and there's a consequence or complication with your action. Now, this doesn't decide whether or not your action succeeds. The total number on the 2 dice has to meet the roll's difficulty to succeed, just like in D&D. Hope and fear are just additional information. You can succeed with fear or fail with hope. Trust me, I do it all the time. If you roll the same number on both dice, that's a critical success, no matter what those numbers are. The book also comes with these printed cards, which have all the character abilities on them. Character sheets can be downloaded online for free and printed. So yes, it is time to order that $50 ink cartridge that you've had sitting in your cart for the last 4 months. And can I just say, the art in this book, ooh, chef's kiss. The full illustrations are gorgeous, but I think my favorite part is all of the sketches, most of which are done by the same guy, the lead concept artist, Sean Ellis, who is also my friend and drew this incredible piece of Necrosha Raging, which is available as a hoodie in my shop right now. Ooh, wow, so badass, so cool. I would never put my dagger anywhere near the heart of somebody wearing a sweatshirt like this. Okay, I'm getting twitchy. If I don't start building a character soon, I'm probably gonna break out in hives. Just one last thing, I will be talking from the player side in this video, but if you wanna hear about the DM side, my friend Pointy Hat has a video all about that coming this Friday.
That's right. Plus, in just a few short weeks, we'll be at Gen Con in Indianapolis.
Well, hang on. We're still talking Daggerheart. Let's put a pin in that. A hat pin?
Oh, was that the whole joke?
My viewers like puns. Anyway, just come back in like 20 minutes.
Whatever you say.
Okay, let's get into it. The first step of character creation is choosing a class. This is where you decide if you're signing up for Intro to Spellcasting or Swords 2. I know what I'm picking. There are 9 classes, and 6 of them are basically the same as D&D classes: Bard, Druid, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, and Wizard. The new inventions are Guardian, Seraph, and Warrior, although Guardian and Warrior are both fighter-esque, non-magical champions, and Seraphs are basically just clerics and paladins in a different font. I don't say this to be dismissive, there's a reason these archetypes are so common in fantasy, but pretty much all of these classes and subclasses have a direct parallel in D&D. It only starts to feel distinct once you get into the actual character abilities. In order to explain how classes work, I need to explain the domain circle, which I actually think is a really clever system for distributing abilities and creating classes. Here's how it works. There are 9 domains, which are different fantasy themes. These domains are Arcana, which is innate magic, Sage, which is nature, Bone, which is the body, Blade, which is weapon mastery, Valor, which is protection, Splendor, which is life and healing, Codex, which is magic study, Grace, which is charisma, and Midnight, which is stealth, secrecy, and probably a killer smoky eye. But these themes don't match up exactly with the classes. Instead, when 2 domains love each other very, very much, a class is born. So a druid is Arcana plus Sage, a rogue is Grace plus Midnight. You get abilities from your domain, so that means that a rogue and a sorcerer would have access to some of the same abilities, those from the Midnight domain. There's a lot of reasons I like this system, but I think the most exciting part is how easy it'll be to make more classes by mixing and matching domains. Sage plus Splendor gives gives you a woo-woo nature healer who probably uses crystal deodorant. Blade plus Arcana, you can now cast Stab. Midnight plus Bone, Necromancer. Please give me a Necromancer, I want one so bad. Now, since I'm trying to make a character that could only be made in Daggerheart, I definitely need to pick one of these 3 new classes. Warrior and Guardian are both martial classes, and despite all the sword jokes, I am a slut for spellcasting, so it's gonna have to be Seraph, a divine fighter imbued with a sacred purpose. The Seraph's domains are Splendor and Valor, so life and healing magic and protection. In Daggerheart, each class gets its own character sheet, so I'm gonna go print that off. Be right back. Thank you for holding. All of our agents are currently being distracted by a cat. Voila! Here it is, the Seraph character sheet. I am marking down that this character is level 1. Each character sheet is 2 pages, unless you're special. Some classes get an extra page or 2, like the Druid's Beast Form list or the Ranger's Emotional Support Wolf. The first page is all the basic information that you need to play. Your stats and health, your weapons and inventory, your class-specific features. The second page is your character guide, and you'll really only need it when you're creating your character or leveling up, or if you lose track of your own backstory details. You forget the name of your god one time and suddenly you're the bad guy. There are 2 Seraph-specific features that are already noted on the sheet. The first is the main class feature called Prayer Dice. At the beginning of each session, I get to roll some d4s and hang on to them. They can be spent anytime to help myself or allies by reducing damage, adding to a roll, or gaining hope. It's a little like Bardic Inspiration in D&D, or spells like Bless or Guidance. And yes, you heard me right, not once per in-world day, not once per rest. This mechanic is governed by the relentless march of real-world time. So if you spend a whole session and all your prayer dice helping a town guard process his recent breakup, you'll still get a fresh batch next week. Apparently the gods reward attendance. The other Seraph feature is called Life Support, and it allows me to spend hope to heal my allies. Hope is a real in-game resource, and not just the thing I lose while checking Twitter. You gain hope whenever you roll your duality dice, and the hope die is higher. Only Seraphs get to use sheer optimism to heal their friends. Other classes have their own unique features that might require spending hope. And of course, there are also universal ways to spend hope, like helping an ally or using an experience. We'll come back to experiences later. Now that we've chosen our class, the next step is to choose a subclass. There are just 2 options per class in the core rulebook. The Divine Wielder, which is basically a paladin with a legendary weapon, or the Winged Sentinel, which is a flying cleric. I used to love flying until planes got Wi-Fi, and now I feel like I can't just watch my Pride and Prejudice 2005 DVD rip for the 40th time since I could be answering emails. So I'm gonna pick Divine Wielder. This is when we get our first card, the Foundation card associated with our subclass. This information is printed in the book too, and you can download printer-friendly versions of all the cards for free on the website if you really want to get your money's worth out of that $50 cartridge. My Foundation card says that my spellcast trait is Strength, which sounds right to me. We all know healing magic flows from the biceps. It also explains my 2 subclass features. First, Spirit Weapon, which allows my melee weapon to fly out of my hand, attack enemies further away, and then return to me. Now, longtime viewers know that I always carry a sword, but if you truly love something, you have to let it go. And if it loves you back, it'll return. Preferably after smiting the out of your enemies. The second is Sparing Touch, which is a super powerful healing ability that I can do once between rests. But what type of creature is doing all this touch healing and sword flinging? That brings us to our next step, Heritage. In Daggerheart, your heritage has 2 elements: your ancestry, which describes your physical body, like species in D&D, and your community, which describes how and where you were raised, like backgrounds in D&D, if backgrounds in D&D mattered at all. Each of these elements gives you additional features. Let's start with ancestry, and I'm sorry in advance because I'm about to get irrationally excited about this. There are 18, you heard me, 18 different types of weird little fantasy guys. Just like in D&D, you've got humans, dwarves, elves, halflings, and orcs. You've also got some slightly less standard but still pretty common fantasy races like goblins, fairies, fauns, and giants. There's dragon people called Dracona, demon people called Infernus, and mechanical people called Clanks. There are also Firbolg because D&D didn't invent those, they're from Irish folklore, or at least the name is. There are also a bunch of animal folk: the cat-like Katari, the turtle-like Galapa, the frog-like Ribbit, and the primate-like Simia. I'd say that they're catering to furries, but there's no wolf, so if they are, they're doing a bad job. But I think we all know what I'm gonna pick. It's gotta be Fungril. They're little mushroom guys, how can I resist that? They can be anywhere from 2 to 7 feet tall, they come in all kinds of colors, and they can communicate chemically with other Fungril. Frankly, I don't know why they even bothered to write the other ancestries. How could anyone pick anything but this one? But if you aren't a Fungril truther yet, or if 18 options isn't enough for you, there are also mechanics for mixed ancestry. ancestries. So if you want to be a fairy giant, you can totally do that. Since each ancestry has 2 features, you just pick a feature from each. Quick and easy. Unlike a fairy giving birth to a half-giant baby. Ouch. But hands down, the best part about the Ancestries pages are the sketches. Each page has a paragraph or 2 of description and 1 polished illustration, and the rest of the page is a collection of concept sketches, showing the different ways that that ancestry might look. When they're young, when they're mature, when they're an elder, how they dress, what their ears or horns or hands might look like. There are handwritten notes full of quirky little details like Galapas sometimes carve designs onto their shells, or giants are born without eyes and then develop anywhere from 1 to 3. Forget milestones like first steps. I want to know when your baby formed his first eyeball. Weirdly, one of my favorite pages is the human page. I am a known human hater. I have to play one in real life every day, so I usually don't want to be one in my fantasy escapism. But this page treats humans like they're just as fantastical and strange as the other ancestries. It's genuinely so cute. There are notes like, humans often dress to clearly display social status, wealth, personal faith, or aesthetics. And apparently we are most easily recognized by our dexterous hands, rounded ears, and bodies built for endurance. It's like if an alien David Attenborough watched an episode of Survivor. I raved earlier about Sean Ellis, the lead concept artist for this book, and he did all these ancestry sketches. Sean told me that the goal was to recreate the feeling of messing around in a character creator, coming up with something that feels completely your own. Which explains why I love this so much. If Baldur's Gate 3 was just the character creator, it would probably still be my favorite game. Anyway, I'm gonna make my character a fungrel, and I already know what mushroom I'm gonna base it on: the parrot wax cap. Look at that cutie. It's technically edible, but people don't eat them because they're too small and slimy. If you're not charmed by that, I cannot relate to you. The Latin name for this mushroom is Gliophorus psittacinus, so I'm gonna call her Glia. I get 2 features, both printed on the fungrel ancestry card. Fungrel network, which lets me communicate across any distance with other fungrels using the mycelial network, and death connection, which lets me touch a recent corpse and extract a memory from it. Come on, tell me you don't want to watch that crime procedural. Law and Sporter. CSI Mycelium. Wait, Cremini Mines. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. Anyway, next up is community. This is just where and how your character was raised. It's not like every fungrel comes from the same community. You can have a highborn fungrel who comes from a noble fungrel family, or a seaborn fungrel who grew up on the coast and knows their way around a ship. Honestly, they all look fun, and I don't have a particular concept in mind for this character's history yet, so I did what any responsible role player would do. I took a little stroll down Wikipedia lane for inspiration. It turns out the parrot waxcap mushroom typically grows in grasslands, so I picked the one community that has grasslands in its art. It doesn't matter how we got there, folks, as long as we arrive. The Wanderborn are nomadic travelers. This gives me a feature called Nomadic Pack. I get to add a nomadic pack to my inventory, and once per session, I get to invent an item that would be useful in my situation and then gaslight my GM into thinking it was always in there. All right, it's time to leave the world of aesthetics behind and enter the world of mechanics. Our next task is character traits. There are 6 traits: agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. Most of these pretty directly map to D&D skills. Knowledge equals intelligence, presence equals charisma, instinct equals wisdom, and this one's tricky, but try to stay with me, strength equals strength. Thank God I'm here to explain this stuff. But where it veers off the path is with agility and finesse. Both of these would fall under dexterity in D&D. Agility is being quick on your feet and nimble, and finesse is about stealth and precision. Stuff that we would normally call constitution, which barely gets used in D&D, has been folded into strength. You're given a standard array of modifiers from +2 to -1 that you can distribute between these traits. The second page of your character sheet, the guide, has a suggested set of stats that you can use if you look at numbers and transform into the math lady gif. All right, time to fill in the easy stuff, the parts of the sheet that don't require any soul searching. First up, evasion, which is your ability to avoid attacks. This plays the same basic role as D&D's armor class, but it's more about agility. Armor is a separate thing in this game. Seraphs are tanky bruiser types, built like a freight train and apparently about as dexterous, so their starting evasion is 9, the lowest starting evasion score in the game. For comparison, rogues start at 12 because they live in a state of permanent flinch. Everyone also starts with 2 hope, so we're gonna fill that in before the narrative destroys us emotionally, and we have to watch a bunch of videos of whales making significant eye contact with people cutting nets off of them in order to regain it. This section of the character creation chapter also brings up hit points and stress, but you don't actually fill anything in yet. You only mark hit points when you get hurt. Until then, blank. Same with stress, you start with a clean slate, like a baby. a baby who's never had to pay taxes or read the news. A Seraph starts with 7 hit points, which will sound terrifyingly low to a D&D player, but in Daggerheart, there's something called damage thresholds. When you take damage, you compare that number to your damage thresholds to figure out whether it's minor damage, which costs you 1 hit point, major damage, which is 2, or severe damage, which is 3. The thresholds are determined by your armor, which we'll talk about in a second. Narratively, hit points track your physical health, while stress tracks your mental strain. In practice, they're just 2 separate health pools that are depleted by different things. Some abilities cost stress to use, and other times things happen to you that cause stress. If your stress fills up and something else would give you more, it starts eating into your hit points instead. Because nothing says fantasy escapism like psychosomatic trauma symptoms. If you run out of hit points, then you start making death moves. I'm not gonna explain those because it feels like we're on a slippery slope where at any moment I'm just one careless step away from reading you the whole rulebook, and that's not why we're here. We're here to make God's favorite princess and the most interesting mushroom in the world. Now it's time to choose my equipment. There are 2 types of weapons, physical and magical. There are also primary and secondary weapons and 2-handed and 1-handed weapons, which work pretty much exactly how you think. Unless you're thinking that you can create a character with 6 arms and wield 3 halberds at once, in which case sit down. Since Seraphs are spellcasters, the character guide suggests a hallowed axe, which is a strength-based magic weapon, and a round shield for the offhand. But if you'd rather make your own choices, there are full tables of weapons to choose from. I actually love the way that proficiency works in Daggerheart. Mine is currently 1, which means I roll 1 die for weapon damage, in this case a d8. When my proficiency later goes up to 2, it becomes 2d8 and so on, which means the weapon scales with the character. There's a tier 4 staff called the Blood Staff that deals 1d20 plus 7, but if your proficiency is still 1, you only roll that d20 once. So yeah, it's terrifying in the hands of a powerful villain, but if your party loots it off their corpse, don't worry, you haven't broken your game. It's like giving a toddler a katana. Not necessarily advisable, but mostly just a threat to himself. Next, we need to talk about armor. Here's how it works. Armor slots are kind of like your armor's hit points. You can spend those slots to reduce incoming damage and then repair your armor again during a rest. Different types of armor give you a different number of slots to spend. Your armor is also what determines your damage thresholds. Stronger armor gives you higher thresholds, so enemies have to hit harder in order to deal major or severe damage to you. I'm gonna be honest, during the beta, this was my least favorite part of the whole system. The damage thresholds are already a little complicated, and the early version of armor slots had players subtracting their armor score from the damage they were taking. Trust me, nothing drains the urgency out of combat like pausing after every hit for the player to go, okay, that's 13 damage, minus 7, and my threshold is 9, and then you carry the emotional damage. They have simplified this system in the final version, thank God. Now when you spend an armor slot, it just reduces the damage by 1 threshold. So if you're about to take major damage, you can mark an armor slot to reduce it to minor. The recommended armor for a Seraph is chainmail, which gives me 4 armor slots to spend, plus my round shield gives me a +1 to armor, leaving me with a 5. The thresholds are 7 and 15, so I can now add my level to those and fill in my damage thresholds. 8 and 16. Every time I level up, I'll add 1 to those thresholds. Of course, chainmail also gives me a -1 to evasion, which brings me down to an 8. Glia isn't gonna be evading shit. Now we just write down our starting equipment, and then we're ready to move on from the bookkeeping and get back into the fun stuff, background. This is where we figure out how to unite all these game mechanics into an actual character. Each class has its own set of 3 background questions, just some open-ended prompts to help you develop some story around your character. Like, how dare you? Who do you think you are? And what do you have to say for yourself? The first Seraph question is, of course, which god did you devote yourself to? Now, I'm sure there will eventually be Daggerheart setting books, but the core rulebook doesn't include a list of gods or anything. However, the book does include 6 campaign frames, which are basically just loose outlines for campaign arcs, and a few of those do include gods. But I didn't pick any of those. I picked the setting called the Age of Umbra, where the gods have cursed and abandoned the world. But wait, hear me out. The campaign frame specifically says that you can still use the Splendor domain. But since divine powers are a fading art and many people carry a lot of anger for the absent gods, showing those powers can be dangerous. Of course, this is a setting where outside of a few carefully protected strongholds, the world is a cursed wasteland. Why would anyone be nomadic in a world like that? Well, maybe it's not a choice. Maybe it's because her divine blessing makes her like a glowing celestial bullseye. Her people have to keep moving. They're not just looking out for her safety, they believe she might be a link to the gods, a potential key to lifting the darkness once and for all. no pressure. Anyway, all that is to say, I don't think she knows what god she serves, or if they're a god at all, but I like to think that in a very dark time, like maybe after losing a loved one, she prayed for help. Not because she believed someone would answer, but because sometimes all you can do is just send a message into the void and hope something's out there. And apparently something was. The next question is, how did your appearance change after taking your oath? I thought about this a lot because she's already a slimy mushroom girl, Where else can we take this? But there's a note on the fungal ancestry page that says sometimes their caps get damaged. So I thought maybe her mushroom cap fractured and the cracks pulse with this glowing golden light, like there's something inside of her, eager to get out. But, in a cool, holy way. Nothing to be concerned about, right? The last question asks, in what strange or unique way do you communicate with your god? I think she writes letters and then buries them in the earth before she sleeps. Dirt mail. By morning, the soil is undisturbed, no sign of digging, but the letters are gone. Sometimes she gets cryptic dreams in response, sometimes radio silence. Classic god stuff. Vanishes for a week and then out of nowhere just hits you with the prophetic visions and the "you up" text at 1 a.m. All right, now that we've answered our background questions, it's time to come up with our experiences. This is another really cool mechanic. Basically, you come up with some words or phrases that describe the specific things that your character would be skilled at. It can be anything, from a simple descriptive word like scholar or loyal to something more abstract like fake it till you make it or pick on someone your own size. Then, whenever that experience comes into play, you can spend a hope to add your experience modifier to your roll, like a little reward for staying on brand. We get 2 experiences to start, and the book suggests coming up with one that's useful in combat and one for outside of combat. For the combat relevant one, I'm putting down hope is a weapon. The idea is that she fights harder when something gives her hope, like watching her allies stand their ground, or seeing someone admit that they're wrong on the internet. For her second experience, I'm gonna pull from her Wanderborn background and give her an experience called No Map, No Problem. She's used to finding her way without any guidance, which I think would be a really useful skill in most games. Okay, we're almost done. The next step is choosing domain cards. Remember how every class is a combination of 2 domains? Well, every domain has a deck of abilities. You get to choose 2 level 1 abilities from either deck. It doesn't need to be one of each, you could take 2 from the same domain if you want. Seraphs are Splendor and Valor, so I get to choose from 6 cards. Glia is turning out to be a real glowing fungal saint type, so I chose the Splendor ability Reassurance, which lets me grant an ally a reroll once per rest, and the Valor ability I Am Your Shield, which lets me step in and take damage for one of my allies. She's glowing, she's guarding, she's girl bossing all across the battlefield. The last step is to create connections with the other characters in the party. I am a huge fan of this tactic. I have a whole video about why I think it's a good idea to give party members pre-existing relationships before the campaign starts. Really gives you a head start on the interpersonal drama. Obviously, I don't have party members, but I'll read you the questions on the Seraph sheet just to give you an idea of what they're like. What promise did you make me agree to should you die on the battlefield? Why do you ask me so many questions about my god? You told me to protect one member of our party above all others, even yourself. Who are they and why? If I had party members, we'd be using these questions to collaboratively plant some emotional landmines for us to dramatically step on in session 20 or so. And that's it! Glia is ready to join an adventuring party and play some Daggerheart. And I hope her party finds her soon, because if there's one thing I know about adventuring, it's that nobody should be sans seraph. I've been sitting on that one the whole video. I feel so powerful. I gotta say, reading through this book got me all amped up to play Daggerheart again. I admit I got a little burnt out during the beta because I was having trouble keeping the rules straight with all the changes, and I just generally felt like I needed more information in order to run the game properly. But now I've got 366 pages of information, so I'm ready to take another stab at it. And by it, I mean the heart, with my dagger.
Are you sure they like puns?
They'd better. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. I was just about to say that if they want to learn more about the Game Master side of Daggerheart, they should go check out your video.
Yeah, it's coming this Friday. Hey, when are we finally gonna play together?
How about in a ballroom in front of 1,000 people at Gen Con 2025?
Whoa, that seems like a lot for a first date.
Sorry, I already signed you up for it. We're playing with Anjali Bhamani, Omar Najam, and Dungeon Dad, with Jay from Swole Initiative as DM. It has a carnival theme, it's gonna be a blast. Oh, and you and I are doing 2 panels together. Can't back out now, half the tickets are already gone.
I guess I could send my human familiar.
Yeah, and you're the one actually controlling him, right? So I guess that would make it 2 clowns for the price of 1.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Check out my schedule and get your tickets at ginnyt.com/GenCon.